We are Rogue Media Sports.
Reese's peanut butter cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
There are any number of reasons you might consider selling your home. To move closer to family, live within a smaller budget, or just wanting a change of scenery. Whatever your reasons, having to figure out all the various housing market trends in your area may not be what you signed up for. That's where an agent who is a Realtor comes in. Realtors have the expertise to help you find the right price and navigate the process to sell your home in a way that's right for you. That's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
It is day 2 of the Doomsday trip to training camp out here in Oxnard, California, alongside Ed Werder, the award-winning reporter from ESPN, and Mark Frito Friedman from Frito Nation Productions. We have had a big day out here, and we got some big things in store for you. Ed, I think, our sit-down with Scott Linehan, I think folks are going to be excited about that. I thought he shed light on, a lot of different items. And then, of course, we topped it off with a little visit with Jerry. What was from our day 2, our second day, the so-called bone-on-bone practice that Jason Garrett promised us? What stood out to you the most today?
It was a pretty physical and interesting practice. And I think the biggest thing in terms of any individual progression is that Randy Gregory, coming back from a suspension that's basically covered all of the last 2 years, has continued to make improvement and become more involved as they escalate his involvement in practice. He participated in individual drills yesterday in uniform, and then today he got in and fully participated. Took 3 rushes in full team activities, looked quick. Jerry does, in the interview that we did with him, address his thoughts on Gregory being ready for week 1 at Carolina, and I think people will be interested to hear how Jerry views that situation.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun to hear all this, and of course we continue. We'll be out here tomorrow for some more practice and some more interviews, and you'll hear from Sean Lee and others. But Jerry Jones, Scott Linehan with a long, about a 30-minute exclusive interview with us where he addresses a lot of the wide receivers, a lot of why they've changed up some of what they've done, and he addresses a lot of different areas.
Talks about expectations for Dak Prescott, enlightens us about the competition to replace Jason Witten at tight end. So yeah, you're right, a lot of good stuff from Scott Linehan.
All right, we need to talk about some of our sponsors that have made it possible for us to be out here. Hodges Capital continues to be a huge part of this thing, and kicked off their first fund 1992, and today have 6 equity funds, each with a specific strategy. Pretty amazing, and they also do separate accounts for individual investors. More on them later in the podcast. I also want to tell you about the lease lady. She does an amazing job, and boy, there are women sometimes that don't want to go into car dealerships, and it's sort of a male-dominated type thing, as much of the world was for a long time. They do it. She does an amazing job, and I want to tell you about how to make an appointment with her. You can go on Facebook and go to Marie the Lease Lady at gmail.com. It's Marie the Lease Lady at gmail.com, and she does an incredible job, buys your trade, puts the best lease financing in place all over the phone. Your dream car awaits you. Boy, if you dread doing those things sometimes with the dealers, call up the Lease Lady. Her name is Marie. You will love her, and that's why we're in that new Honda Pilot as we speak. Frito, let's go ahead now and play the music for Doomsday. All right, and here we go. Day 2 out here from Oxnard, and Ed, you alluded to it. We got to visit with Jerry Jones a little bit, and the big story out here today was Randy Gregory for the first time in a long time. I mean, he wasn't around last season. Season before was abbreviated. I mean, the guy has gone a long time without football, and it was good to see him getting involved. And boy, Jerry Jones, after watching him in one practice, had this to say about Randy Gregory and his availability even for the start of the regular season.
We certainly have had players that have had challenges, if you will, dependence, and we've had players that overcome that and get to play in the National Football League. And so when you have one, that really burns a candle and gives you a lot of not tolerance is the word, but it just gives you a lot of promise. And so, yes, I'd rather lean that way than the other way. Now, the problem is reality sets in, and you have numbers, you have roster spots, you have a lot of things that keep you from really have to limit the players, and consequently it has to be extraordinary players of extraordinary ability, or have the uniqueness to really make an impact. And so you get the old adage that, well, he wouldn't be doing that for a down-the-line guy, or they wouldn't be that tolerant of a down-the-line guy. That's true. It's actually very true. And it's there because of the potential impact. That's how come not only I do, but players as well as coaches buy into that and want to give him every opportunity.
And there he is, Jerry, on that. And Ed, I find it fascinating that a guy like Gregory, who spent so much time away from football, it was out there a little bit. I think what Jerry talked about right there is something we've always known about him, and it's kind of funny. What makes Jerry unique is that he at least admits that you only give someone that has dependency problems, as Jerry alluded to, you only give them those opportunities if they are incredibly talented, and leave it to Jerry to go ahead and say, yeah, you don't. This is the only reason this guy's getting that.
The average player doesn't get this amount of tolerance from an organization. To his credit, he admits to it. I've covered him forever since he bought the team in '89, and I can't really ever remember him making that admission so specifically as he did today. And if you look at his past, then it's very clear that that is his history. I mean, he did it for Michael Irvin, Leon Lett, Eric Williams. He took in Charles Haley, Pac-Man Jones. There's no end to the number of players that Jerry has tolerated misconduct and a little dependence issue. I think Randy Gregory's is a lot more than a little. I think that's pretty well documented. He had a serious problem with marijuana at Nebraska to the point that they just stopped testing him. They knew he was going to test positive, so they didn't bother to test him anymore. He failed the drug test at the scouting combine. Still, the Cowboys spent the 60th pick on him because they thought he had that kind of raw, athletic, natural pass rushing ability. And that is the reason they basically stood behind him and are giving him this opportunity all this time later, when he's basically done absolutely nothing to justify the investment that the Cowboys have shown and the patience that they've demonstrated in bringing him back. And for a while there, at the beginning of Jerry's answer, I kind of was getting the sense that he was setting the stage for Gregory not to make the team, that he was going to have to compete for time. There was a lot of competition on the defensive line, and maybe Gregory was vulnerable in that regard, but then I thought he completely turned it around and made it sound like he's going to be chasing Cam Newton all over the field in Carolina.
That's what it looks like, and I think you're right. Another second-round pick is Jaylon Smith, who's been a big part of this podcast, has been with us exclusively before, and we may talk to him tomorrow, and he apparently has had a great camp. We've seen some good things from him, and Ed, you talked to Jerry Jones about Jaylon Smith, the impact he has, and I thought Jerry had some really interesting things to say about him, and this is the first time I've heard Jerry use a specific word about Jaylon that really speaks to the expectations and the faith they have in him.
Do you feel like Jaylon Smith has justified
the expenditure of a second-round pick on him, and how much improvement have you seen from last year to what you're seeing now?
What I'm seeing right here in practice, right now, what I've seen so far, what I saw in the offseason, completely justified our drafting him in the second round. Completely. He's really not only got a chance to really help us on the field, he's a real, he's one of our potential cornerstones in every way, leadership as well as play.
And there's Jerry on Jaylon Smith and what he believes in him. And when he talks about, Ed, these players, I think Jerry loves to gamble on players. And one of his common things that he comes back to is he feels like the success he has had with players like Charles Haley and others sort of justifies continuing to take these chances.
Well, and Jerry's always been a risk taker. We know he's from the oil business and calls himself a wildcatter and so forth. And the Cowboys are uniquely structured because Jerry's the owner and the general manager, and so you only have to have so many levels of approval to get these kinds of things done. And it's almost like the Cowboys have allowed Jerry to make the second round pick every year. And in the two cases we're talking about, for very different reasons, there were a lot of people who questioned whether Randy Gregory or Jaylon Smith would ever be worth what the Cowboys invested in them. And Jerry, to his credit, endured that criticism, countered it, believed all along that they had information because of Dr. Cooper doing the surgery on Jaylon Smith's knee and the nerve damage that he suffered, that he had a better sense of what Jaylon was going to be capable of and when he might contribute. And I remember during that draft, somebody with the Cowboys medical staff's telling me, we think Jaylon Smith's going to have a 10-year career. It's just a question of when is it going to begin. Well, I think it's really begun now. I think when you look out there, he's a completely different player than we saw exploited by the Rams, in particular in that pivotal game that the Cowboys lost. I went out to dinner with some people with the Rams the night before that game, and they cared about one thing. They wanted to know, was Sean Lee going to play in that game? And I quite honestly told them I didn't know because we weren't certain about it at the time. But they clearly had developed their entire defensive plan based on exploiting Jaylon Smith if Sean Lee was out of the game, and that's exactly what they did. I don't know that that's going to happen with regularity anymore, given what we've seen from Jaylon Smith running around without that brace. He's trying to play in the NFL with drop foot. That's a pretty incredible thing to ask a player to do.
Yeah, and I'll believe it when I see it in the regular season. I think it's a great story, and I sometimes I think the Cowboys want to believe this story and love the story so much that they wear their heart on the sleeve with this player. That happens. And another player that they seem to be falling hard for, it is Tavon Austin, and they really didn't give up much for him, traded a 6th-round pick to bring him in here, and to me, this guy has been one of the stories of camp, and to hear Jerry Jones tell it, this is kind of a remarkable thing. Jerry Jones compares the energy level he brings out here to one of the greatest all-time Cowboys receivers ever.
Specifically, I think that I like the way the energy that number 10 is bringing. That's inordinate because just by the nature of how we've gotten him here, and then his pedigree, as well as him to bring along that really it's Michael Irvin-ish as far as the energy that he brings. And so I know the guys appreciate him. I certainly do, from my perspective, to have that kind of impact on his teammates in a time that you have to call on it.
Classic Jerry hyperbole on Tavon Austin. I think one of the interesting things about Tavon Austin is how does this guy who's a top 10 pick go to the Rams, and the Rams are one of the worst offensive teams in football going into last season. They become the highest scoring team in football, and an imaginative coach like Sean McVay can't figure out a way for Tavon Austin to be involved in that resurgence and turnaround in any significant, consistent way. To the point that, this is a guy who failed, but got a second contract that was astronomical, And the Rams still traded him away after this prolific offensive season for virtually nothing, a 6th-round pick. And I was talking to Dak at the end of practice yesterday, and he said, I've only been here for 3 years, but I've never had a receiver with this kind of speed. He said, I'm not going to say I can't overthrow him, but I got to get the ball out of my hands pretty quick if he's running a 9 route. So I think he has a potential to create a lot of explosive plays. We know run after the catch was something the Cowboys failed miserably at last year. They're one of the worst teams in the league in that regard. And I think this is a player that they believe can create the kind of explosive plays that win games. And Jerry's always been a guy. The thing that all three of these guys have in common, Jerry's taken a risk on all of them. Less so on Tavon Austin. You know, Jerry once told me, hey, when we're a good team and we're picking late, those are the times where I feel like I really got to take a risk. That's my chance to go. A damaged guy with great ability is a guy that I have a chance to hit big on, and I'll take that shot when I think it's warranted.
Yeah, and they are building this team around damaged players, so they'll continue to see what they can do with that. And we did have an opportunity in talking about Tavon Austin and some of these weapons the Cowboys have, and then the lack thereof. I sense that the offensive coordinator, Scott Linehan, and the play caller for this team, there's a bit of excitement and enjoyment over trying something new. And that is not that he's not going to miss Dez and Jason Witten in some ways, but I think Scott Linehan is willing, even kind of, he's had a long career in coaching. It sounds like he's willing to try some new things, especially with this new cast of characters at tight end and wide receiver. And we had the opportunity to sit down with Scott Linehan. Here's about 30 good minutes with the Cowboys offensive coordinator.
Scott, we, for years I felt like you were new around here, but I mean, you really have been a veteran on this coaching staff. Does this one feel any different than some of these past training camps? Obviously, you've got a couple of big time guys like Dez and Witten not with the team anymore. Is it kind of fun? I mean, you miss them, but at the same time, kind of a new, younger group. Has it been pretty fun so far?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. We're going to miss those guys. It's hard to replace Pro Bowl type players like those guys, and certainly people that have been big part mainstays of this offense and this organization like they've been. So our challenge is fun, but it's going to take, I think, a group of people to do that. I think the word team comes to mind. The team has to pick up the slack for missing some of these guys that aren't on our team anymore. So, but it's fun to watch the guys step in and get asked to do more roles. Seeing these young tight ends start to develop in areas that maybe they wouldn't have had an opportunity before, and then we got we got some old guys in our receiving corps, but we got some new guys too. So it's going to be fun to watch these guys develop and become the new, the new stars and fan favorites for years to come.
What's the challenge for Dak in particular in assuming a greater sense of leadership with the two guys you mentioned being gone, Witt and Dez, and replacing their productivity at the same time? Yeah, I mean
that's. Quarterbacks embrace that. They have their whole life. It feels like college, when Dak was probably a sophomore at some point and had a senior or whatever, and those guys move on, and then you got to work. That's what you do your off season, work with the sophomore that steps in, and that's what young teams tend to do and college teams tend to do. The NFL's a little different. Guys are around programs that for years and years and years, and in this case we have the nucleus of our offense is going to be young players and a lot of new players. So he's just got to put in the time, and he's worked harder this offseason than maybe any quarterback I've been around at just spending time with his new teammates.
Do you think it can be somewhat liberating for a quarterback like him to not have to force throws or get Dez involved or make sure Witten feels like his opportunities are what he wants them to be?
Yeah, I've heard that comment a few times from people. I don't think Dak ever felt like that. Maybe at times you feel like you should because those guys have their ability. But he was never in a position where I think he felt like he just had to throw it to him. Now, maybe we've put a lot of emphasis on that. So I think this will be a little bit more, we're putting guys in different places, calling plays, let the coverage dictate where it goes, spread the ball around. I don't know how many different players touched the ball in our preseason game the other night, but I didn't add it up. It was like the longest list of touches. I don't know if anyone had any more than 2, but there was a bunch of them. So I think you could see you could see the ball spread around a little more.
What has caused you? I've been interested in reading some of these stories from out here that you are moving guys around more. Some guys are interchangeable. Maybe Hearns can play inside, he can play outside. You have other players who are able to do that. Tavon obviously is going to be a weapon for you guys. Why would you do that now, maybe as opposed to with some of the, is the personnel now dictate that, or you just guys decide, hey, we need to have a little more, multiple type schemes and that kind of thing now?
I just think the profiles of the players is that they're more, they have this position flex. We don't, the kind of the old school. You got this X receiver or this Y tight end. I think that's very effective. We've been very effective with it. Even before I was here in this system here in Dallas, a dominant X receiver and a productive tight end has been a big part of it with the running game and O-line, and so that's been a very effective formula. When you then now don't have those type mainstays in your offense, I think you definitely have to have a little more multiplicity to your approach, especially as far as location of players. Guys got to obviously be smart enough to be able to move around and do this stuff, which these, and our guys have always been. We've moved guys around more than people think we did in the past, but we've got some veterans that have some experience in being in different locations, so it helps to have those guys. And then you bring the young guys who aren't maybe quite ready for that. They can play a position while someone else, you mentioned a Hearns on this particular play, he plays a different position. So I think you got to do that to pick up the slack where we didn't have have that issue as much in the past when we had mainstay great players like Dez and Witt.
Specifically about the tight end position, I'm particularly obsessed with one player because he's from my alma mater.
Rico Gathers.
Yeah, and I watched him play all his basketball.
A lot of rebounds.
He certainly was and one of the better offensive rebounders I've ever seen. Is he taking? I mean, the one thing y'all are asking him to do that for whatever reason he seemed a little resistant to, which I don't understand with his background why he would be, but the whole run blocking thing was going to get him more reps. Are you seeing progress there? We'll talk about him, and then we can talk about the rest of the group. But he's certainly on that goal line play the other night. And by the way, this guy that's hovering over us is actually with us, so don't worry.
You're spending way too time on the fourth team tight end. I'll tell you that.
No, Ed, I'll let you know what we spend time on. But I just didn't want Coach to be worried about Frito's presence, as a lot of people are. But where is Rico, and is he closer than ever to really being a productive guy for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, he missed a whole year and pretty much redshirted his first year, and so he's missed some time, development time. He's always been willing to block. It's just new to him. Football in general is a new sport to him. It's not a new sport to most people who get in the NFL, but for him, who was primarily basketball was his thing through his high school and college years. So, if you think about it, there's 8 years of no exposure to the game. So he's been a quick study in a lot of ways. I think the injury and missing last year set him back some, not being able to be out there and be part of it. You could see him develop throughout his rookie year when we weren't playing him. I call it his redshirt year, a little bit. So he's just catching up, and I think you mentioned the other night he had a nice block down there. He certainly has the ability, and I do think he wants to do it and has the desire. He's a great kid, has a lot of talent, and I think with his commitment and our new tight end coach Nussmeier, he knows the importance of being dedicated to this thing 24/7, and I think he's going to be great for Rico, and I think Rico's responding well.
One of the things Jerry Jones said shortly after last season ended, and he announced that he had decided to bring back Jason and you and Rod as the coordinators was he wanted the offensive staff to go back and look at things that were being used around the league offensively, and maybe incorporate some of those concepts. I'm wondering to what extent you did that and what you saw that was appealing that we may see the Cowboys use this year that hasn't been a part of the offense in the past.
Yeah, without being, revealing a lot of things. That's kind of part of the strategy of our approach. But yeah, we've not only studied other teams. We do that every year, actually. It's not just last year. But you kind of look back. You study Dak's college career. You study the college game, which has made its way into the pro game. You all have seen it. The big buzzwords, RPOs, and all that stuff. I think you'll see some of those things from us more so than you have in the past. We've run them. We've got the zone read game. We've got all those things. Been very effective. Our quarterback 2 years in a row has had 54 called run carries, and I think his average has been about the same, about 8 yards per carry, which you like. You can't go over the top with that because you don't say, hey, we had 54 this year, let's go 250 this year. You don't have that 150 man roster you do in college where if something happens, just put the next guy in. So you have to have a little bit of a, approach that says that you call that when you need that type of stuff, right? So we're going to do that. We've got different personnel, so we're doing some different things with our personnel. Like I said, we're moving people around a little bit, playing with some different tempo offenses. And so, yeah, I think there's a number of things maybe we did a little bit that we're doing more, and then there's some new things too.
But ideally, you still want the identity of the offense to be Zeke Elliott, the power running game, the offensive line up front.
I mean, look at we've invested in a great offensive line. I mean, that's if you're all of a sudden you're going to get in this world where you're in the shotgun and you're running, you're throwing the ball when Zeke could have maybe ripped off a long run, and you throw an incomplete pass and you're sitting there thinking, maybe we need to hand the ball to the guy a little bit more. So, that's our starting point identity. That's the bread and butter of our identity. We just need to have a much more effective, much like 2016, complementary, passing game to what we're doing in the run game. And felt like we made strides as we got into the middle of last season, and then when we had, the availability of guys and a few injuries, we just as a team, coaches, players, didn't respond very well for a couple of weeks there, and we took a little step back, and then I think we got into recovery mode and played a little more solid and sound, but we weren't the same as we were when we hit our stride middle of the year when we were playing Kansas City at the end. I think we had 4 games there where we scored over 30 points, and we felt more like ourselves, and we got to get back to that and maintain that this year.
I think I know you want to jump in here one more time, Matt, but I want to ask one more question if you don't mind.
Typically we don't.
I mean, the Rico Gathers thing took a lot of time here. But on Dak and kind of the point you just alluded to there with the injuries, it kind of changed everything in the middle of the season. I think there's a misconception about when people evaluate Dak and his first 2 years. I think they believe that he was great as a rookie and then not very good his second year. And I think the reality is that if you break his 2 seasons down into 4 quarters, he's been really good for 3 of the quarters, and then not so good in the 4th quarter, which was when Tyron Smith, his left tackle, went out, when Zeke finally had to serve the suspension. Is that how you see it as a coach?
Yeah, we don't like to go down the excuse lane too much. Again, I defend where Dak is after 2 years. Certainly is set a fairly high bar and standard as a rookie. I don't know how many other rookies. Been some pretty great quarterbacks that have played here. I don't know what their rookie years were exactly like because I wasn't here, but I just know how Dak's was, and that seemed pretty good for a rookie. And then funny that a guy goes 9-7 as a second year, and it's like a disaster. And I wasn't as good, but just got to give this guy a career first before you start. I think his 3rd year is going to be much like his first. Lot of much wiser guy now going into it after he's been through adversity in his second. So, this guy is going to be a mainstay for many, many years for this team and in this league because he gets it. He knows how to play, and you don't just do that by accident. You just go out and play that way because you just got lucky. You might get lucky one game, but you don't get lucky for for 16.
22 games.
20, yeah, 22-10 is pretty good to start his career, and if we give him a chance, he could end up maintaining a win-loss percentage like that would be pretty good.
I'm trying to think back over your coaching career, and I'm thinking back to Detroit, your most recent one before the Cowboys, when you did have one of those frontline, unbelievable receivers for your time, some of your time there. What is it? Is it almost give you? Ed used the word liberating, but you don't have what you would call those premier one receiver that's going to just the name. They walk out there and they kind of scare folks or whatever. Have you had that kind of situation before in your coaching career? And what does that sort of give you the ability to do when you have a group like you have here? Because I think we're used to around here, you go from Irvin, and then obviously
you got Dez
Drew before that. And everybody's like, okay, you got to have a huge name type receiver, and y'all certainly don't have that at this point.
Yeah, I just think it's the strength of our receiving core is going to be the core, how they play, the whole thing, their attitude and approach, and just given 110% for the team, and I just think it's more about it's going to be more about the team as a whole, and so I think a group picks up the slack for some great players that aren't here anymore with with Jason and Dez being gone, and I just feel like that's really a big part of our identity and our mantra is playing as a team, and so it's always nice to have those mainstay players. I just think we're going to develop those mainstay players with a young group and find out who they are, and it might be a fun surprise for everybody to see maybe a young player emerge into those roles. So I think it'll be fun for everybody to follow the new guys.
Who's the biggest leader like that? When you say Gallup, and you obviously want to point to spend as much time as you can around this guy. I know Dak's shown great leadership. But in that receiving core, which of those guys would you say is going to, in that room, be the guy people really gravitate toward?
Well, our older guys, Beasley, T-Dub are guys certainly that lead by example and show how you got to work. I think the addition of Alan Hearns is big for that. He's a consummate pro, does everything you ask and more. He's got ability to play all three positions. He'll do the dirty work blocking in the run game. He'll go across the middle in the slot. He'll do all those things. I mean, that's leadership itself, let alone he's a great example for young guys to see him as a guy preparing for practices and games and how he shows up early and stays late, all that stuff. I mean, that's all authentic stuff, and I think that's going to be a big impact for some of our young guys. The guy that is becoming a real leader for us, is Tavon Austin, because he's been through adversity in his career. He was a high pick, been there with the Rams, and now, got to the end of his contract there and was traded to us. He's got a little bit of a new lease on life, but he's been through it. He's been through extreme highs, being drafted high, playing, and then having, the expectations of his position be a little bit maybe less, utilized, I guess, for whatever reason. Now he has a new lease on life with us, and I think he can be really good for the young guys as well.
One of the big concerns in training camp and the preseason that we've seen so far is the officiating as it relates to this new helmet rule, which can be called on offensive players, and it's supposed to be called on offensive players as well as defensive players. You got a very physical running back in Zeke Elliott. Have you had any conversations with him about this particular rule and the application of it as it pertains to him?
I think we're all just, we know that the rule and the intent of this is for, player safety. So we're all for that. And so we'll just see how it's officiated. I think there's a lot of things that just happen in football where guys helmets are going to hit each other,
Well, it doesn't even have to be helmet to helmet. It can be helmet to rib cage, shoulder.
I think just, logic will, take over here, and I think if it looks like it's an intent, I think they're calling it. If it looks like it was not on purpose, just kind of happened, I think that's going to go. I don't think it's going to be, I don't think people are going to go over top. I just think they're going to be just, I think that the deal is to discourage using the helmet, as the main part of the impact of your hit, whether it's an offensive or a defensive player. So anything for player safety, we're all for. We just got to figure out how we iron out how it gets officiated.
We know you got one of the best offensive lines in the league. That's been proven over time, and you're adding at left guard a rookie who's not only joining a veteran group of accomplished players, but he's also enduring a position change and changing levels. What's Connor Williams up against, and what kind of impression has he made on you early on?
Well, he's made a great impression. The guy's a hard worker, very intense, seems very bright, and he's already got the work ethic and the competitive fire that you're looking for. Fits in really good with that group. That's a big standard in that room, you know. So, he's set in between two of the best in the league. If I'm going to start my NFL career, I wouldn't mind if I was a guard to be between two Pro Bowlers, all pro type guys. So I think that's a good start for him. And, he's going to go through growing pains. We know it. He's just got to know that as long as he keeps working hard and putting the time in, he's just going to get better. So we're real excited about it, and it's going to be fun to see him grow and mature and be part of that group.
We're close to the anniversary of that ruling come in that hung over y'all's heads all last year. Now that you come into this camp and Zeke hadn't had to deal with that, does he just seem like that just had to be, and again, some of it was his own doing, but to have that hanging over basically the whole season last year, does this guy back to sort of the lighthearted, I don't know if lighthearted's the word, but loose kind of guys that everybody's gravitated to so much his rookie season? Are you kind of seeing that guy out here, and how much do you think this is going to help him not to have that, something like that hanging over him?
Yeah, certainly there was a distraction last year, and you can see that he's a lot more focused and ready. I just think, he's a young guy. Everybody goes through things in their life, and, it was certainly a learning experience. You can tell that he's responding, and it's affected him in a positive way, and that I think he's, matured like all young guys need to do. And so I think you see a guy that has really he's on a mission. He's focused for the season. He's in great shape. He's dialed in. You can tell that he doesn't have a lot of other things going on that would distract him or put him in a place that would, affect his concentration. So I think that's great news for us. And Zeke's had a great camp. I think he's going to have a great year.
Can you put into context how challenging and frustrating that was for a guy who's trying to design a game plan every week for an opponent, that sometimes last year, while this whole thing was being appealed, that you didn't have him practice till Friday and didn't know if he was going to play at all during the course of an entire week?
Yeah, it was challenging, but that's part of the deal. You can't, when things are, there's things outside of your control. You guys got to.
Those are the things I worry the most about. The things that I don't control.
Yeah,
the things I control, I think are going to go pretty well. The things I don't control are the things.
You literally try to control everything.
Yeah, that's the issue. If you can't control them, you don't want to spend a bunch of time worrying about them. You do have to have contingency planning, though, and we spent a lot of time doing that. Like you said, he got some last hour. Yeah. So we weren't disappointed that he was available to play for us. I'm not saying that, but it made it. It made the last year, unique the way it ended up. But hopefully we can avoid those kind of distractions this year and just knock on wood, stay healthy and not have any distractions and go play ball.
What's it like? You coached Kellen for a pretty good long run there between Detroit and here, and then having him as the quarterback's coach, it's kind of like he's grown up under you, at least his football career. What's the quarterback room like with him in it, and having a guy that's barely removed from his playing days in there with Dak and White and Cooper and that bunch?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't even think of Kellen as a young guy in a lot of ways. I feel like he's just been around and been coaching this. He's been prepared for it. He grew up as a highly successful. His dad, high school coach, his coach's son, played the game like that. He didn't have all the physical tools that a lot of guys have, obviously, but he certainly had the ability to play the game the right way and knew how to win and be that guy. So now that he's in the position where he's coaching, just the way he prepared, how he approached the game, how his mind works, just fits good with the quarterback position. He can right now immediately show these guys this is how we're going to look at our game planning, and hey, we got this period today. These are the 5 things you need to know. And he thinks of it like a player, and at the NFL level, quarterbacks have to almost be coaches on the field. They have to know what I know, what everybody else doesn't necessarily have to know. Quarterback has to know it all. So I think it's been a great and very easy transition for him. Other than he's probably going to have different hours than he was used to having, and he's got a very understanding wife, an unbelievable person, and kids and everything. He'll make that transition, but Kellen will make that transition work because he's conscious of how he wants that to go too. So it's a lot of fun having him in there, and he takes a lot off of my plate. And adds a lot to the room and to just the coaching and the techniques and reads for the quarterback.
Here's my last question. You're the only tight end in football in Jason Witten, who played over 1,000 snaps last year, and now he's retired abruptly. How do you evaluate the guys you have now and the roles that you think they can play in what's been a very important position in your offense?
Well, yeah, our tight ends, a lot like receivers, it's going to be a group that replaces Witt. There's going to be Swaim playing his role, right? You're going to have Blake Jarwin going in. Sometimes he's Y, sometimes he's a slot RF, or maybe he's our Z tight end, right? So you have that. And we have those kind of things. Dalton Schultz we drafted knowing he didn't have a lot of pass production, but he started with his blocking. So maybe that's something he does first, but he needs to be a guy that can master this part of the route tree as a rookie. Then you throw the wild card guys in there with Rico and these other options out there at tight end. Then you're all of a sudden saying, okay, well, do you have 3 or 4 tight ends? I don't know, but they're all going to play in a game, much like they did in the first preseason game. I think you're going to see that a lot more in our games.
I still think 7 years from now, even if he's done okay, we'll still be calling Rico a wild card guy. That's just gonna.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully he becomes a mainstay. That's our goal.
Yeah. One last question for me. So you talked about y'all were talking about RPOs and those things that you've been really gracious with college coaches over the years, and college coaches like to come visit the NFL guys. There has been seemingly more interest from NFL coaches in what some of the different college programs are doing. Do you have, other than going up to Idaho, your stomping grounds, do you have any programs you love being around, or did you spend any time with a particular college coach this offseason or anything like that to try to, maybe glean some ideas?
Yeah, without revealing what who those people are, we go out and we will work out players. Sometimes it works. I'll pick players at a place I want to go talk to the coach, to be honest with you. I'll go look at those players, but I'm going really for 2 reasons. So we talk to the coordinator there or whatever. So, we do that. Last year we had Dan Mullen and his staff from Mississippi State here up for obvious reasons, because of Dak, and spent a bunch of time with Dan and his offensive staff and his O-line coach, and, it was really good stuff, right? Have a lot of stuff they do, and you're just like, oh, okay, we can do that. Or I don't know if we can do that. Not blocking this guy in the NFL could be hazardous to your health.
Career.
So, but so there's that give and take. But all the time. And there's a bunch of great coaches there in college that come around in the spring, and if they've come by to watch practice, I always make them. I say, part of letting you in here is we have to spend some time up in our office here after practice. We'll come up. I want you to teach me 3 things you do well, or whatever. So we spend a lot of time doing that. And enjoy that.
Waco at all.
Well, they've had some great. That program's got a lot of did some really nice things too. So we spend a lot of time. If we're not with those coaches, we study what they're doing.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, we really appreciate it. It is the Doomsday podcast. Scott Linehan, who's one of our few. Now I don't know.
Repeat visitors?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if it's because they won't come back on or because, but we like to think it's because we only ask the people to come back that we really enjoy having on, so we really appreciate it.
You bet. Appreciate having you guys, the honor of being with your group. I've heard great things about it. I don't spend a lot of time listening to podcasts. My son and his best friend from college they have this little podcast thing they do. So he sends it to me. So
that one you do have to listen to.
I listen to it because my son was he wants to be in the broadcasting business. He wants to be in front of a camera when he gets done playing. So. Hey,
a lot of us would like to do that.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, just tell your son his iPhone on the podcast app. Just type in Doomsday Podcast.
Doomsday
and
Podcast.
He'll hear you.
Our cartoonish. Yeah,
I'm sure he will.
Hear his dad.
He'll hear it. I'm sure he will. He'll already know about it, or I don't know how he knows that stuff.
Well, we appreciate you enlightening us about your offensive plans to the extent that you could do that. But I think we have a much better sense of kind of what you want to do on offense.
Now I've got a notepad here. We're gonna turn off our deal, and if you'll draw up some of the new plays.
Yeah, I'll do that. I got to go to lunch.
And if you try to convince Tavon Austin to quit turning us down when we ask him,
what is up with that?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm sticking up for him now. I think this lunch thing is a hard turnaround for those guys because his new receiver coach Sanjay Lal. These guys have to go from this walkthrough over to meetings and watch the walkthrough, and that's new uncharted territory for those guys.
So you heard it here, Sanjay overworking the receivers.
No, he's not overworking. We're demanding a lot of them.
And there he was, Scott Linehan, always good and very gracious with his time. And Ed, you'll like that we were sitting there talking to him about podcasts. His son Matt Linehan has a podcast and kind of wants to be in journalism. I think he wants to be in front of the camera and that kind of thing. But
don't we all?
Matt Linehan, his son, had already found the podcast and was listening to it. Also, I noticed on Twitter, Matt Linehan, son of Scott Linehan, was rooting hard against Brooks Koepka. I think he was rooting for Tiger, and it did not work out for him. Obviously, Koepka was able to win, and that worked out for me, in fact.
It didn't work out for me either.
With a little
$20 lunch bet.
Little side bet that you and I had. But what stood out to you the most, Ed, when we talked to Linehan for a pretty good period of time there?
Well, he didn't obviously want to make excuses for, what happened to the offense in the second half of the season, but it's fair to point out that they were 5-3, and Dak Prescott had 16 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions at that midpoint in the season, and that they then lost Ezekiel Elliott to his suspension and Tyron Smith to an injury. Tyron Smith, the left tackle, and Zeke Elliott, the franchise back on this football team, and the guy really they built the entire offense around, played a total of 3 snaps together in the final 8 weeks of the season. That was the reason that this team had a crisis on offense for a month or so. But beyond that, I think the common theme here, when you look back across the guests that we had and the topics we've discussed, Jerry Jones has shown incredible patience with Jaylon Smith. He's shown incredible patience with Randy Gregory. And for a different reason, he's shown great patience, more than maybe the fan base would like, with Jason Garrett and his 2 coordinators. There were 7 head coaching changes in the NFL this season, and he brought back Jason Garrett. There are 31 new offensive and defensive coordinators in the NFL, the most single-season change in NFL history, and yet Scott Linehan and Rod Marinelli have been brought back by the Cowboys. And so this is a pivotal season for this coaching staff. But Linehan seems to show a great willingness to try something new on offense. Let's see how different it looks. It needs to be more explosive. It needs to be more dynamic. I think they have to get Zeke Elliott even more involved, especially in the passing game. Cole Beasley was terribly underused last season. So they've got to fix all of those things, and they've got to replace the productivity of Jason Witten and Des Bryant. And I don't think that's an impossible thing to do, because I don't think either player was certainly at the apex of his career in terms of productivity the last year.
Yeah, and the last time, by the way, they went with sort of a nondescript receiving core was the year after T.O. was gone, and Miles Austin put up big numbers. Jason Witten had over 1,000 yards, and there was a third receiver who I'm missing right now, who put up over 1,000 yards that season. So they actually jumped in there, and without T.O., that frontline receiver, they put up some big numbers. So we'll see what they're able to do with him. Also tomorrow, something I'm excited about, Randy Gregory is going to speak to reporters for the first time in this camp. We talked about him, the man who's had trouble with dependency issues.
Dependency issues.
Jerry called it little dependency. We'll talk to him And then, of course, Sean Lee's going to sit down with us. I mean, is there anybody we've missed? You had a good visit with Dak. We're trying to get pretty much everybody. We talked to Jerry today, so it's been a good run for us out here. Thanks to our partners, thanks to Frito Nation Productions, thanks to Hodges Capital and the work they've done, and the fact that Don and Craig Hodges founded this thing back in the late 80s. And you talk about some of the great funds that you can get involved with, 6 of them, in fact, and the great thing about the Hodges, no matter if you're high wealth or pretty much anybody who wants to invest, they have single investors, and then they have these funds that are amazing. Ed, I know you're a big hedge fund guy, mutual funds. The funds that Hodges Capital put together, these things connect. And that's one of the reasons they've become some of the best in the business over the years. And we're so appreciative that they've been a part of this thing.
They can easily help me make back the $20 I lost at lunch today, then?
They certainly could.
Very nice.
Ed, I would. You and Frito both should call Hodges Capital. And we appreciate everything. We'll be with you for day 3 from our coverage Doomsday from Oxnard, California. Good night, everybody.
Reese's peanut butter cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
Is this house a good price compared to others in the area? Are prices going up or down? If I don't make an offer right this very moment, will I miss my chance? These are just some of the questions a home buyer might ask. And these are the sorts of questions an agent who is a Realtor can help answer. Because Realtors have the expertise, data, and access to specialty training to help you navigate the process of buying a home. They provide support, guidance, and have your back every step of the way. That's what Realtors do, because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.